Good afternoon. Fasten your seatbelts, please. We have a very exciting topic. Welcome to GDPR Fundamentals and Einstein Prediction Builder. I have with me my colleague Sam Edwards. He's a product counsel at Salesforce. My name is Ralph Schundelmeyer. I'm on the product management team for Einstein. We've been working on GDPR for 6 months now, at least. And the most famous slide, please keep in mind we might make forward-looking statements, so if you make purchasing decisions, please make them based on features that are available today and not based on our forward-looking statements. Before we get started, maybe just a quick show of hands. I mean, who of you has actually really heard about GDPR? Yay. And how many of you have an active project underway? Okay. And how many of you believe that you will be done by May 25th? Good. That's not too bad. So what we want to talk about today is, we only have 20 minutes, so we want to do a quick dive into what is GDPR about, what are really the key critical elements. And then we talk about the right to be forgotten, and then consent management, and related to how does it affect AI or machine learning, especially in the context of Einstein Prediction Builder. Okay, Sam.
First, I am a lawyer, but I am not your lawyer.
You will do it the old school way.
All right, thank you. So yeah, before we get started, I am a lawyer, but I am not your lawyer. This is not legal advice. This is not a review of Salesforce's own GDPR readiness. This is not going to be a comprehensive review of all 99 articles, and we can urge you to consult with your own lawyers on what that means for you, but we still hope this will be helpful. So what is the GDPR? GDPR stands for the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU. It's a new law going into effect on May 25th of this year. It overhauls the existing privacy regulations that were a little bit of a patchwork and creates a whole new comprehensive privacy regime focusing on greater transparency and greater individual rights. And importantly, it comes with teeth. There's a fine of up to 4% of global revenue, which I think has made everyone stand up and take notice. The GDPR has 99 articles. Oh, sorry. The GDPR has 99 articles, and we're not going to be able to go through them all today. But one high-level concept that's very important to understand GDPR is the difference between a controller and a processor. And what does that mean? A processor is someone like Salesforce who takes instructions on how to process personal data. A controller is a customer, is someone who has a direct relationship with the data subject. And because you know what your data subject wants, you're the person in control of your own GDPR compliance. And our role is to give you the tools to make sure you can succeed. And at Salesforce, we know everyone has their own use of Salesforce. And in Einstein, we know everyone has their own use of Einstein. So we try to make our tools as flexible as possible so that once you decide what you want to do, we let you do it. GDPR can, at a high level, be boiled down to 3 main points: security, accountability, and individual rights. In terms of security, you know that trust is our #1 value at Salesforce. And in terms of accountability, all of our generally available Einstein products are backed by the same trust and compliance documentation as all the rest of our Salesforce products that explain exactly what and how we're doing around the privacy and security of your data. And individual rights is what we're going to focus on today. And there are many individual rights under GDPR, and again, we only have 20 minutes. So we thought the best way it would be useful to you is to give you a concrete example of, in one particular product that is now in pilot, Einstein Prediction Builder, and 2 particular rights: the right to deletion and the right to consent management. With that, I'll turn it over to Ralph.
No, I need a clicker, not your microphone. Mine works, surprisingly. Okay, maybe since not all of you might be familiar with Einstein Prediction Builder, a 1-minute intro to what it is. The idea is really, as it says, point-click predict. It's a declarative tool for non-data scientists to define predictions within Salesforce. So you don't really have to have a data science background. There's automatic machine learning that we use so that you get fast results from your data. And the beauty is also that you can use predictions to extend your processes in Salesforce, which is actually another session that we show tomorrow, how you can tie Prediction Builder to process flow. Very important for this conversation is that Einstein is basically, or Einstein Prediction Builder is a downstream consumer of core CRM data, meaning we replicate data from core, whether it's Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, into the Einstein environment. And this also makes it quite challenging for us from a GDPR perspective, because we need to we need to react on signals that happen on the core side. And it's really important to understand that we are, like any other application, a downstream consumer, so we need to consume information from core. So what is the right to be forgotten? Data deletion. Sam?
So data deletion is one of the fundamental rights of a data subject in the GDPR. And a data subject can be anyone. It could be one of your users. It can be one of your customers. It could be any person, any individual that you have personal data on. And they can come to you and say, I don't want you to have that anymore. And we have provided a way for you within our system to make that happen.
So as I mentioned before, we are downstream consumer, meaning the actual delete has to happen in core first. So how would you delete a record in core? There's a multitude of abilities, features that are there. Most famous, the delete button, of course. That might be the easiest way to do that. However, in many orgs, delete is actually disabled, so only an admin can delete records. So we also have the mass delete capabilities. You can use the data loader to mass delete records. You can use process automation. You can use our API. You can do it programmatically using Apex. You can use our SOAP and REST APIs, or of course there are third-party ETL tools that you can also leverage to do deletions in core. Now, as I mentioned, we are a downstream consumer, and if you think high level about the 5-step process, 4 of those steps actually have to happen in core, in CRM or Service Cloud first before we actually come to play. So really look at this as a high-level guidance. What do I actually need to do? And it could be a little bit of a roadmap for you, because first and foremost, you need to place to store this information that one of your data subjects requested that the data has to be deleted. Then you have to provide a means to actually collect this information. I mean, this could be online, that you provide a website. It could be via email. It could be in person. It could be in your call center. And then the third step is the actual deletion, right? So again, this could be Apex triggers, it could be process builder, it could be platform events. So the actual deletion has to happen so that the relevant records are deleted. Because keep in mind, and that's probably for next time a slide that I should have added, if you delete a contact, right, you also need to delete all the records that are related to the contact, right? So it could be an opportunity, it could be a case, but it could also be a custom object. So this is really very important, that all the records that are somewhat related to that data subject have to be deleted in the same stack. So this is why this is not just a high-level one-step deletion of one record. It really has to be cascading. So records are being deleted. If we talk about user records, they have to be obfuscated. And then the 5th step is actually, what do we do in Einstein with that? So we build it out functionality for Einstein Builder. When we replicate the data from Salesforce, that we listen to this GDPR deletes in core and remove the data in all the data sets that exist in Einstein. Now the second item is consent management, which is much more tricky.
Right. So what do we mean when we say consent management? And it really ties down to this idea of having a purpose to process data, having a reason to not just have the data in the system, but to do something new with it. And depending on what you're doing, what you're predicting, if you're making predictions relevant to a person, if you're predicting your forecasting for the next quarter, that could be different. And everyone, especially with something as flexible as Builder, is going to have their own circumstances. So what we did is build a flexible framework that lets you control exactly what is used in Einstein and what doesn't. And we call that consent management.
So you probably know there are quite a few features in Salesforce that have been there for many, many years before even GDPR was around. And it was really more related to, what am I allowed to do around a contact or a lead? For example, if a person says, hey, don't call me, I don't want to hear from you. Or there are email opt-outs so that people do not want to receive sales emails from you. Or I don't know if anybody still sends faxes, but we still have the feature. And then, of course, there's the platform capabilities. You can create custom objects, you can create custom fields to maintain this consent information at a much more granular level of detail. And you can really use the flexibility of the platform to maintain this information, whether it's about the right to be forgotten, or the restrictive processing, the do not profile, or if you want to maintain communication preferences at a much more granular level. As of spring, there is also a new object in Salesforce called the individual. And the concept of the individual record is really a representation of the data subject, because one person can actually play multiple roles in your Salesforce system. And we need the ability to really relate it all back to one record. And in this case, this would be the individual object. Really think of it as a building block to implement your own privacy processes as of now, right? I mean, there's a comprehensive roadmap in place, but we really need to look at what's available right now. And at the current stage, it's basically the ability to collect privacy settings on an individual record, and then you can look it up from a contact, from a lead, from custom objects. So that's what the individual object is really all about. I think it's a great stepping stone because one thing we should always keep in mind about GDPR is you have to provide an audit trail, right? So if you delete a contact, how do you maintain an audit trail? So the individual record really gives you kind of the umbrella to maintain this information when the customer has requested the deletion of data, or when they have requested a do not profile. And then you take on your follow-on action, and the individual record always keeps that history for audit trail purposes. So even if it might not have all the automated things that you are looking for today, they might be coming in the future, and I do believe it's a great starting point, a great building block to start. Now, again, from an Einstein prediction builder point of view, how does this consent flow look like? And again, in gray, those are the steps that actually have to happen on the core side. Again, we're a downstream consumer. We only consume signals from core. So there is pre-work, right? We need to store this consent. Whether you use the individual object or custom fields, we need the ability to store whether you consent or whether consent has been revoked. You will probably also have very interesting discussions about, is consent explicit or is it implicit? We definitely had very exciting discussions about that. So GDPR is actually much more fun than it sometimes sounds like. So you need to be able to store the consent. Then again, you need the capability to collect this consent. Whether that's a website, email, phone call, kind of pretty much the same. Then again, there's the processing. As I mentioned before, the individual object right now only gives you the ability to store these consent preferences, but it doesn't do the propagation. Again, let's say you have a contact. The contact says, well, I don't want you to profile me in your artificial intelligence applications. You can store that information there, but how do you propagate it to all the records that are related to that contact, right? So this processing has to happen. Because then in the final step, it's actually two steps. Keep in mind there's always a time factor. You might have processed a lot of data about this data subject, and now the data subject revokes consent, meaning you also have to look back. So for this purpose, we take the what we call the do not profile signal to remove all the records from all the Einstein data sets. But then also in future data pools, we filter out records that have such a profile and don't even allow it into the Einstein Data Hub. So it's actually a two-step process. And when we look at Builder, you actually have the additional option to define filters for modeling and scoring. So it's almost like a safety measure, like kind of your parachute, that if you have potentially missed a record, then with this filter you can make sure that it's not included in any modeling and it's not included in scoring, which meets the GDPR requirements. Also keep in mind, underlying there's things like time to live, so that we only maintain data sets for a certain period of time to also stay within these time boundaries. Now this is really a journey. I mean, you saw when we did a show of hands, I mean, it kind of was a 70-20-10 split. So we are all at the very beginning. I think a lot of very detailed questions will also be clarified over the next couple of months, if not years, through legal action, because the law itself is kind of fudgy in some areas. So I think there's a lot of room for clarification. But I think it's really time to start. Our key resource is salesforce.com/GDPR. That's really your home base for everything related to GDPR. That's where you find all the links, videos, trailheads, and this is what is constantly being updated. There's also a trailhead module which gives you like a high-level introduction to the European privacy laws. Then of course there's our updated data processing addendum, all good stuff. There's a GDPR white paper, a fact sheet, and then of course the data protection and privacy documentation. Last but not least, I think I'm not a lawyer. I have a lot of fun sometimes reading these documents, and I'm like, what is this supposed to tell me? But still, there's a link for the GDPR regulation details. Really read through that and build your own opinion as well. So this slide deck will also be shared, so you will have all these links. But we definitely wanted to put that out. I think what is also interesting to note, GDPR will be May 25th, which is actually before 2.14. So this will also be our challenge, that we actually have to release functionality from an Einstein Builder point of view to you before the actual due date of 2.14. So that once the GDPR due date comes around, all the functionality is in place. Anything else, Sam, we should mention?
No, I think you covered it.
Great. So again, this was just a really high-level overview. That's all you can really do in 20 minutes. Like I said, we have been working on this for 6 months, but there's a lot of good stuff. Really check out salesforce.com/GDPR, because even from an Einstein point of view, you also need to understand there are many Einstein products that deal with different use cases, that deal with different data. So there's not one unified process across all, depending on the data that you have to deal with. The functionality has to be different. I think also a key takeaway is think about process first. Think about all the scenarios that you can envision, and then involve your lawyers to revise those scenarios. Because some of the solutions might be such corner cases that you need only a process solution, right? But you have to be prepared, and I think that's what potential auditors might be looking for. Have you thought about it? Have you documented it? Do you have a process in place? Are the roles and responsibilities clearly defined? Okay, we have a minute left, but no Q&A today, unfortunately. Thank you so much.
Thank you.